you guys for coming along to our planning pathway session. I'm Jayshree Astley. I'm a senior lecturer at London South Bank, and I'm also from a practice background. I've been in practice for the past 20 odd years. Sam?
I'm Sam Johnson-Schlee. I'm currently the course leader for all of our postgraduate programs. I've been teaching at South Bank since 2017. I'm from a more academic background and have taught widely across the course in that time.
Excellent. So we've put together a presentation so you can see what our postgraduate courses are like. We've got a couple of students to speak, just to say, you know, give their experiences. And we'll take you through some of what we do.
So hopefully everyone can see the screen. It's hard to see you guys, so do shout if there's any questions. So I'm just going to very briefly talk through our postgraduate programs. I'll try and do it quickly because I think some of you will already be familiar with what we do here, but there's going to be some time for questions as well, just to make sure in case there's anything specific you want to cover. And the purpose of this meeting really is just because we know that one of the things that you'll be considering at the moment is where to use your pathways for planning and funding to send students. We really hope LSBU is kind of high up on your list of options. So I guess just in general about our teaching, we are the second oldest planning school in the country. We've been doing this for a very long time, and we have a team of experienced academics who are research active, so kind of creating new knowledge and working with policymakers and engaging directly with the planning landscape as well in that work. And we also have practitioners like Jayshree, who have got incredible professional experience, incredible contacts. And because of that, we are really good at thinking both about how to kind of give people really rich educational experience and also how to embed that in the workplace. And our goal when we teach is to make sure that our students come in with all of their different backgrounds and leave ready to start in the workplace. And that's not just the apprentices who will be potentially in the workplace throughout the programme, but also our more traditional master's programs as well, where we're not engaging directly with the workplace through that delivery. But we think about that a lot, and it plays a big role in the classroom as well. So I think that's what we offer. So we have a range of different options, both traditional degree routes, so the MA in Town and Country Planning and the MA in Urban Design and Planning. And then we also deliver postgraduate chartered town planning apprenticeships.
All routes are accredited by the RTPI. So especially with the pathway to planning, I think you're able to choose which course you would like your students or employees to go down. So there's pros and cons of each of the routes, but you do get to choose whether it's the MA they do or whether it's a chartered town planning apprenticeship that they choose.
I think that sort of covers the same material.
Yep. So on our website, you'll be able to see the different courses that we offer for the master's programme and the different modules. So this is just from our website.
And very briefly to give you an overview of the project, the teaching that we do. So this is for the traditional degree route. So if students were studying part-time, they would do two, which I assume they would be in this case. They would be doing 2 taught modules a semester in the first year. And then in the second year, they will be doing 1 taught module each semester and completing a dissertation. So that will cover a kind of planning politics and theory, which is a wide-ranging theoretical and historical bit of work that engages a lot with kind of policy and the history of planning to give students that wider context and that grounding in critical thinking. The making of place, which is about kind of establishing some of the fundamentals in terms of thinking about place and thinking through design from a kind of broad way in which, what would be relevant to planners who are working in different fields in different areas. And then in the second semester, they do 2 modules, planning, law in practice and sustainable places. Planning, law in practice is pretty self-explanatory. It's a really cool module, which ends up with a mock planning inquiry, which the students always really engage with incredibly well. I think they were doing it last week, and students are coming in suits and really putting the effort in to kind of practice those professional skills and the practical skills of presenting themselves. Sustainable places, which is a module I teach, which is about thinking about sustainability across kind of planning issues quite broadly. Currently, that is a module that we do a field trip with. We're not quite sure exactly where our field trip provision is going to sit next year, but I'll talk about that in a second. And then maybe you could talk about transitioning in practice.
So we do a transitioning into practice module, and actually a lot of this is about making sure that the theoretical knowledge that the students have learned are transferable into practice. So there's lots of practical things like site research, applying planning policy into different projects that we have, and also being able to better ready themselves with the skills that they need. And that might be things like interpersonal skills, professional behaviours. So that module would go over all of those kinds of things as well. That is the type of thing that they would do on the MA. So these are what Sam has been talking about, the MA route, if you would choose to take that route rather than the chartership route. The MA, sorry, not the chartership route, all of them can be accredited and you can get your chartership from. The Chartered Town Planner route doesn't have the transitioning into practice module. That would have a learning from best practice module, which is more practical and geared towards the industry for chartered, for that apprenticeship.
And just there's just one more thing to highlight, which is that students also have an opportunity to choose an option in one of their semesters, and currently the options are housing regeneration, urban design project, and sustainable infrastructure and mobilities. We're not always able to run all of these, it depends on student numbers, but those are the options that are available to students on all programs. So for urban design students, if any of you are interested in an urban design route, we have some bespoke modules for the urban design project. So those are design and property development and urban design from theory to practice, which is kind of developing some of the practical and also theoretical knowledge around urban design a little bit more deeply. And then on the apprenticeship program, we run most of the same programs, so most of the same core programs. The students will do planning, politics and theory, the making of place, one of the specialism options and the urban design project. And sorry, one of the specialism options and planning, law in practice. They also do 2 PPM modules, which Jayshree delivers very, very well.
They are the planning practice modules, we call them, because that is basically the PPM 6 undertakes the work that they do in practice and puts it in a format where they can reflect on what they do in practice to prepare them for their chartership part of the RTPI's assessment. So, and the professional profile module at level 7, so the second year, is all about getting the students ready to undertake that chartership process. In the transitioning into practice as part of the MA module, rather than the Chartered Town Planning Apprenticeship, transitioning into practice, the module that gets them ready for the EPA assessment as well. It goes right through the APC written assessment. So there's 2 different routes. I'm not sure if you'd be aware, Chartered Town Planner apprenticeships. So the apprenticeships need to go through a gateway kind of system and they'll do a professional discussion. Whereas in the MA route, it would be what would traditionally be the way to gain your chartership. And that would be do a year's worth of work experience post qualification, but we get the students ready to make sure that they are largely successful in their charterships. I myself am an RTPI chartership assessor. So what we teach the students is precisely what they need to be successful within their RTPI chartership.
As the person that signs off on the students that are going through to Gateway as they come through, we get a really good rate of students through and as quickly as we can. And I think it's a testament to the hard work that's done by Jayshree, but also our apprenticeship team, including Kwame, who works specifically on walking students through that process.
And for that process, in the Charter Town Planning apprenticeship, we've also got dedicated skills coaches that keep monitoring, keep the students on board, answer any questions, and then we will work quite closely together. So at LSBU, we know usually what's going on in each part of the student's apprenticeship life, or even if they're not on an apprenticeship, we know where they're at. We know about, the references, the skills. We're a very approachable team, I would say. And I'd like to basically say we know our students in the most part. We've got a great set of lecturers that often teach at level 7. So the level 7 students, especially those coming in onto pathways of planning, will know their lecturers quite well and hopefully be able to go to them with any questions.
I just also wanted to highlight one of the key differences between the apprenticeship and the traditional degree route, which I'm sure you'll be familiar with, is the requirement for off-the-job training. So for students, for apprentices taking one of our degree apprenticeships, they need to evidence that they have done 20% off-the-job training, which is documented through a kind of system that we use called APTEM. For the MA degrees, that requirement is not the same. And that does mean that some employers, including local authorities, have been opting for the traditional route, and most of our employers have been taking the apprenticeship route, I think, but we have a few on the traditional route because there is a difference in terms of the way that your time is structured over the year. I just briefly talk about field trips and we'll finish. So I just wanted to highlight one of the things that I think we're particularly good at South Bank, which is taking students out into the real world and talking about planning issues in the kind of world we live in. Being in an Elephant and Castle really helps with that. We're in the middle of one of London's current biggest regeneration areas, as Joe will know, as a Southwark planner. But we are also we also do trips around the country as well. We have fewer trips level 7, but there is currently a trip that Jayshree and I were in the Netherlands last week with our level 7 students, so that's for the people on the degree route. Next year, I think it's likely that will take place in the UK. And we also go out and visit live sites, and I think that's one of the coolest things we do. So I know recently that on the urban design project option, our teacher for that, who is working in practice, David Batchelor, took our students to a gas holder regeneration project. I can't remember where it was, not the Southall one, which is very controversial, but it is another really interesting site. And I think that gives students a great experience. Maybe some of these students in the room with us attended that. I think, as you'll see, like some of these photos are from the different field trips we've had. We've been down to 22 Bishopsgate with the master's students in previous years. At that point, it was the tallest building in the city, and we're looking at sustainable systems and things like that. We've been to Liverpool. I think this year we even went down to the NLA in town to look at their urban design models. So whatever suits the module, we tailor something. So even if it's not an official field trip, the students will also get out, which is quite nice for them to not always be in the classroom, and then make something of it when we get back into class, which is always nice. I think as well that does a good job at summarising our real strength, which is a kind of mix of expertise and pragmatism. So we are able to really think about the challenges of the workplace and of the real world and apply our thinking there. So we're always embedding our teaching in that context. So just finally, before we pass over to talk to some of the students that have taken this route, these are the contact details for myself, for Jayshree, and also our head of school, Ijaya. I'm sure Kwame, whose contact details you should, I think, already have, you'll be able to share those as well with anyone that needed them who has this recording. Okay.
I'll stop sharing my screen now. And we thought, do you have any questions between the different routes that Pathways to Planning can put you on, or any questions in general about the course? So we've got that. In fact, should we get the students up first? Sorry, guys. Let's get you guys up first. Jamie, if we start with you, would you be able to talk about your experience at London South Bank, what you've learned and how it fits into your work life?
Yeah, thanks, Drew. So yeah, I'm Jamie. I work at Suffolk Council now as a planning officer. I was part of Pathways cohort 2, so I started my job in last September. Yeah, I found LSBU and the master's degree, which I'm doing the part-time master's degree, to be really, really helpful for work. I think it's been just an invaluable way to accelerate my sort of induction into the planning sector, because I didn't come from a planning background. My degree was in politics, so I was completely new to it. And the course at LSBU has just helped me learn my way around the field so much faster. I think there's the mixture of content and coursework, like Sam and Jayshree said, is really balanced between sort of the theory side of things and the traditional university learning way, but also building skills that you are actually going to use in your day-to-day life. And again, I think they've touched on this, but I think the real asset that LSBU has is its people. Being taught how to do urban design by a practicing urban designer is incredibly helpful, and learning about planning law from somebody with decades of experience as a planning solicitor is also incredibly helpful. So yeah, in terms of the practical experience, it's been totally invaluable.
Thanks, Jamie. And then we've got Wasanur. Sorry, I'm so sorry if I say your name wrong, but I haven't taught you yet. You're probably coming to me next year.
That's all right. Yeah, my name is Bushra. I also work at Suffolk County Council, coincidentally, and I was also in cohort 2, and I'm doing the part-time masters. I also didn't come from a planning background. I didn't even know about planning until I applied for the Pathways Planning program. I come from a geography and international development background, so very social sciences. But I've enjoyed LSBU in the sense that there's always support, and the fact that these assessments are always kind of different. Like, it's not always just essays or exams. The fact that for our making of place module, we had to produce work that we would actually produce if we were working in that field. So we were making like kind of place studies, and that was really good experience for me, because that's like something that I'd never done before, and it was interesting to see how that all worked, and doing group assignments. And the part that I really enjoy is that it gives, because I work in policy, I don't really interact with the other kind of DM or contributions aspects of it often. So it's good to get that context in, so that I can kind of piece them all together and get a more wider view of what planning is and get a better understanding.
Thank you. Thank you for that, guys. Really pleased to hear, and I will have you both, I think. Are you both on the MA course? I'll have you both next year, so that's when we'll meet properly. So I think there's a couple of things that I'd like to flag up, and that's probably the difference between the chartership route and, like Sam was saying earlier, the MA route, which both of our students are on.
And they both lead to an MA qualification.
They both lead to an MA qualification. It's just, as Sam had said before, it's the reporting of the work the students, I guess, are doing at work, which is the difference. On the traditional MA route, which is not the chartership, there is a off-the-job system that needs to be filled out. So that goes all year round. So that's what we use a system called Apten. And I think the apprenticeship team gets involved with that, and our skills coach, and that basically logs 8 hours or so every week the students would have to log. So in that monthly period, they would log their 24 or so hours of how many, or 48 hours, whatever, of how much off the job training they've done, but that needs to continue all year round. So the students get 1 day a week as what would have traditionally been called day release, but they do need to have that day a week all year round. Whereas in the MA route, I don't think there's a requirement to log their work all year round in terms of an off the job training day, which means that the students are not at work for basically term time. Whereas in the apprenticeship route, they are off the job as such for 1 day a week all year round. So I think that's the main difference in terms of the MA traditional route and then the chartership route for all the employers. But otherwise, unless, like, have you guys got any questions? If you have any questions, please do shout. I'm sure it'd be helpful for anybody listening to this. But hopefully you've got an idea of who we are. Any questions from anyone?
I'm just going to ask, just with the field trips, how does the cost or the funding or, work for field trips?
So some of that is slightly up for review at the moment in our university, so I can't give you a really firm answer. In the past, it has been covered as part of the fees, but I think we may need to slightly change that model towards something that is part subsidised. But I don't want to give you an answer that concrete answer that we won't be holding to in the future.
And it's going to be this year we're going through that change and a review.
Yeah.
Okay.
In London field trips, it is literally meet us at that place.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, I think there's so much we can do that way, and there's so much richness in that. I think the thing to say, I guess, about field trips is that we would always provide an option there as well. So if students couldn't fund themselves or their employer couldn't fund them and there was a funding requirement, there would be an alternative assessment and programme put in place for those students. So no one's going to lose out.
Perfect, thank you.
No problem. If that's all the questions, thank you so much for joining us. Students, thank you guys for joining us as well. That's been really helpful. We are going to send this video out to some of our local councils and partners. So thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. That was really useful. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Great. Kwame.